Is the fall of Robotyne imminent? And is Prigozhin back all the way in Africa? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's August 22nd, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get into it. Okay, first, we have some progress in Robotyne, as you can see here, right? Back it up, you can see Ukrainian forces advancing nearly to the center of the town. This main street, so to speak, sort of bisecting the town. You can also see as they move, again, you're seeing Ukrainian forces push along the flanks. Again, I think this is the tactic that they're going for, where they position forces on a flank and in the center so that Russian forces that remain on the defense are under continual pressure from both the north and, in this case, the eastern flank. I think this is actually a really interesting tactical blend between the Russian tactic of a frontal assault supported by artillery and thermobaric rockets, which inflicts considerable casualties, and a NATO tactic in which the support by fire and flank is very common. But I think what you're seeing here is actually the flanking maneuver is the support by fire position, where forces will will deploy here, but they won't actually be the advancing forces. Instead, the advancing forces will be the support by fire position. It's a really interesting innovation and a good way to soften these strong points, right? While still maintaining that 90-degree angle. Again, it's really hard. If you haven't, I'm going to say if you haven't been in combat, if you don't have some military training, either and have been subject to either really realistic combat sims or a very or real combat itself, you may not appreciate just how much when you get to cover, it's omnidirectional, right? Or not omnidirectional, it's monodirectional. So you know where you're taking fire, you get to cover. And then if you take fire from a different direction, it's really hard to protect yourself, right? From that other direction. There's almost no cover organically that's going to protect you from two directions. You have to build a second set of cover and fortifications. And this remains true at scale. Again, big earthworks, trenches here. If you commit to building this, you are going to be totally exposed to forces here. And as we can see, let's check the ruler real quick. You can see, right, if you're a Ukrainian force operating here, you can be pinging the Russians 2 kilometers, so 2,000 meters. So we're talking about artillery, mortars, you can get up to 3,000 meters from direct fire weapons like an M2, the Browning 50 cal. And so you can, again, so there are some direct fire weapons, a cord perhaps, that you can put rounds onto Russian positions in most of Robotyne from this position here. Now, obviously, right, obstacles, there's a whole forest between them. But remember, they also, if you have drone observation, you can even walk things like 50 cal. You can walk those rounds onto a target even if you don't see them. You can literally run it as an indirect fire weapon. So I think this is a really interesting Ukrainian tactic. And as we're seeing, it actually is producing effects, right? Ukrainian forces continually advancing day by day. You could see there's not been a ton of changes elsewhere. Russian forces doing some level of redeployment. You could see focusing primarily on blunting their efforts in Staromayorsk. But you can also see that the gains of the last 2 weeks, right, somewhat limited. We haven't seen much advance near Prigozhin. And even this salient here, where I sort of expected to see Russian forces maybe be a little more trapped, is not really Ukraine's focus. And again, it looks like Russia is really trying to blunt a Ukrainian offensive right here, passing through this area. So just some interesting interesting thoughts. Let's see if there's any changes in Bakhmut. Not really. Looking over at the combat map, you guys can see that there's not really been an update recently on offensive actions by either Russia or Ukraine. Again, you can see Russia focusing on using its fairly limited artillery rounds to blunt Ukrainian efforts again near Robotyne, definitely near Staromayorsk, but they're also just trying to cover the front line, which, as I talked about, is a common offensive tactic for them to rely heavily on artillery. Oh, there we go. Looks like 6 hours ago, they're reporting 30 combat engagements. Again, a really small number. And what's most interesting is you can see them concentrated just to counterattack outside of Klitschivka, some near Avdiivka, and in Donetsk. And that's really it. Which, again, to me is a sign that the Russian forces here may be getting anemic. Of course, this is coming from the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. So bear in mind, they may, for operational security reasons, not want to disclose Russian activity in this area of the front lines. Guys, if you want to see some of the combat videos, and a new video is dropping today, we're going to take a look at the footage coming from Robotyne, coming from this fighting, but I can't do it here on YouTube. YouTube demonetizes me regularly. So that footage is going to be over on combatvetnews.com. It's my version of Patreon, since Patreon also doesn't want war content. But any one of these tiers is going to get you access to the members only content. I'll get demonetized if I even show you the thumbnails of these videos. That's how intense they are. But we do the deep dive analysis. We look at the gear, the tactics, everything that's going on in these videos, so we can understand aspects of the fighting in real time that we just can't get from these overview maps. So if you want to support the channel, keep me independent, and get access to those videos, again, go to combatvetnews.com/become a member. Link is up here in the description, or you can just type it into Google. It should be the first hit. Anyway, let's talk about Prigozhin. Prigozhin's back, right? In a sense, he has dropped a recent video. We can see here, here he is, and I want to point out that he's definitely got some. Let's see if we can get this here. There we go. Oh, stop. You can always count on the Daily Mail to share this sort of stuff. So as you can see, he is in Africa, right? This is definitely nowhere in Ukraine that I've seen large, flat, gravelly land. He's got his plate carrier. He's got his boonie cap. And he is saying that that Wagner Group is deployed to Russia, engaging in what they're calling search and destroy, or reconnaissance, search and attack, something like that. But he says they're going after ISIS and Al-Qaeda and other bandits. He also was like, we're taking true warriors into service. So what's also interesting is you could see he has a pretty high-end AK here. Man, this really fucking Daily Mail. Suppressor, Picatinny rails, optics, but you could see they've already got some technicals. I don't know what those guys are doing, but I point this out because Prigozhin, it seems, is following a tried and true playbook where threats to the regime are assigned to distant places where they cannot physically pose a threat to, in this case, the Kremlin. This makes a lot of sense, but remember, Wagner they're tough, they're survivors. Prigozhin is cutthroat. So if I were Putin, yeah, I would know that I bought myself a little time, but remember, Wagner is probably going to look to try to, if they're the defining military power in the region, what they're probably going to do is look for ways they can make money. A contract with the government of Niger in what seems now like almost a certain fight against its enemies. So Niger may have said, hey, we are going to have Wagner contracted to handle the Al-Qaeda and ISIS problem so that our military can focus on fighting the ECOWAS coalition. I wouldn't be surprised if that changed. Sub-Saharan African countries, some of which are very wealthy, but their militaries can be very amateurish. And Wagner is a professional combat-tested group. So I would not be shocked if you saw Wagner in combat. But it seems like the government of Niger has very few options and will sign on Wagner for just about any price. Again, if the government gets deposed, then it doesn't matter. They won't have, like, if Wagner is your only option, you'll pay whatever they ask. And at this point, it seems like conflict is likely. So Prigozhin is in a strong negotiating position vis-a-vis the government of Niger. Very curious. It will be a real interesting look to see how this plays out. Anyway, guys, that is all I had for you. Thank you to our Colonel tier members of Combat Vet News, the elite of the elite, and of course, a special thank you to our Lieutenant tier members. I really appreciate you guys as well for your support, and a thank you to all the members of Combat Vet News. I couldn't do this without you. Thank you so much, and I'll see you all in the next one. Cheers.